Here we go again. I mean, this is the truth show, and there's more. Oh, I'm not done yet. Oh, and there's more. Oh, I'm not done yet. I mean, this is the truth show. Oh, yes.
Hello, everyone. What's up? What's up? Welcome, welcome, welcome. In this unexpected video, because it's very unexpected, I know it is. Let's talk about, is the Titanic the most famous? I mean, we're going to talk about the Titanic, which is one of the most famous ships in history. And we're going to talk about why they are so adamantly talking about the ship. Of all the ships in history, people continuously talk about this one ship. I mean, why? Seriously, why? We're going to talk about that. But we're going to also talk about, what if the story we were told is not the only version? What if the myths tell us more about power, memory, and fear than the facts ever could? Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about Titanic versus the Olympic theory, past life, children, and memory, phenomenons, Jacob Astor and mythic wealth narratives, Federal Reserve conspiracy theories, and race and identity historical mythmaking, and them actually covering up some ethnicities who were on the Titanic. And we're going to talk about why these theories exist. And I'm going to tell you theories that no one has talked about. So far, I looked at several, and majority. I did a video about pretty much explaining the difference between the Olympic and the Titanic. I did it a while ago. I would definitely link it. But the theory I have, very few talked about. Majority of everyone is literally jumping on the same little story train. Oh, they switched with the Olympic for insurance fraud and Federal Reserve. That. That's literally the only theory everyone is talking about. I go deeper. Yes, my truth seekers and anyone who just came on, my name is Keisha. So welcome to the Truth Show. Some stories refuse to stay at the bottom of the ocean, okay? I mean, we all know the Titanic sank in 1912, but the myths surrounding it have never stopped rising. I mean, from switching ships, theories to past life memories, from wealthy passengers turned legends to claims about the Federal Reserve. The Titanic has become more than a tragedy. It's become a mirror of what we fear, a mirror of what we question, a mirror of what we don't answer or don't understand about power, money, and memory. Tonight, we're not asking what happened. We're asking why people believe what they believe. This is like the Titanic versus Olympic, myth, memory, and mystery. Oh, yeah. With that said, here are your intro and your warnings. Let's talk about it, people. Let's go deep.
Please note that this is all alleged. I've never met any of these people. I've deeply researched all of my information. This is a trigger warning. In this video, I may be talking about or showing sensitive material about some subjects or topics that may be disturbing or upsetting or may bring forth some troubling memories, as you read in the description or title. With that said, either end the video now or brace yourself. Aside from that, enjoy.
Beautiful. All right, beautiful. How you doing, Andrew? How you doing, girl? You're always the first person to comment. Okay, so here we go. Just want to say good evening, my truth seekers, and welcome back to the Truth Show. Tonight, again, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most fascinating and tragic stories in history, the tale of the Titanic. Yes, I can't wait to get started with what I discovered, okay? Now, let's start at the very beginning, okay? The Titanic. Yeah, the Titanic was built over a century ago in the city of Belfast, Northern Ireland. Back then, Belfast was known for its world-class shipbuilding, and Titanic was a true marvel of engineering and I can't even speak, gigantic, luxurious ship that was considered the largest and most advanced of its time. Workers spent years crafting every detail from the powerful engines to the glamorous dining rooms. Now, please notate they are saying Irishmen built these ships. Just put a pin on that because I'll be bringing that up later. Anyway, so literally, these Irishmen spent years crafting every detail from the powerful engines to the glamorous dining rooms, which means these Irishmen was so artistic. They carved the beautiful sketch clock in the grand staircase and the banisters and the wood carvings. I want you to notate that. Irishmen. I'm talking about the modern day Irishmen and the race of the Irishmen we know today. Now, no one has done that since then. I just want to point that out. But, put a pin on that for now because, yeah, we'll go back to that later. So put your red pin on there. Okay. Anyway, after all that hard work, the Titanic was finally ready for her maiden voyage. That means her very first trip across the Atlantic Ocean on April 10th, 1912. Titanic set sail from Southampton, England, with plans to stop in France and Ireland before heading to her final destination, New York City. On board was more than 2,200 people, 2,200 people, including wealthy passengers, families looking for a new life in America, and a dedicated crew. But what was supposed to be a dream journey quickly turned into a nightmare. Just a few days into the voyage, late at night on April 14th, the Titanic struck an iceberg in the icy waters of the northern Atlantic. The collision tore open the ship's hull and water began pouring in. Despite being called unsinkable, the Titanic was in serious trouble. Panic and confusion spread as people scrambled for lifeboats. Sadly, there weren't enough lifeboats for everyone. No one thought a ship this big could ever really sink because they advertised it as unsinkable. In the freezing darkness, the Titanic broke apart and disappeared beneath the waves. Over 1,500 lives were lost that night, with only about 700 people surviving to tell this tale. A majority of those people who survived were in first class and in second class. Now, the sinking of the Titanic shocked the world and led to major changes in how ships are built and how safety at sea is handled. It's a story that reminds us of both human achievement and human vulnerability, and it still captures our imaginations more than 100 years later. So whether you're fascinated by history, engineering, or simply the power of human stories, the Titanic legacy is one of we can all learn from. And it literally transcends in the story, and the effect of this Titanic and the people on it is something that we're still living on and still living with right to this day. Well, I'm not done yet. I'm just getting started. I just want to get the whole approval out of the way. I need some background music. So let me go ahead and put some background music on. Let me see what I have here. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think that's good. Let me know if that's too loud for you guys. Okay, so let's talk about the Olympic switch theory. Let's dive into one of the most intriguing and controversial Titanic conspiracy theories out there. The Olympic switch theory. So what is the Olympic switch theory. In simple terms, it's the idea that the ship that sank in 1912 wasn't actually the Titanic, but her nearly identical sister ship, the RMS Olympic. The theory claims that the two ships were secretly swamped in a massive cover-up, and it was the Olympic, not the Titanic, that went down in the Northern Atlantic. Now let's break this down a little bit. Both the Titanic and the Olympic were built around the same time by the White Star Line. Please have noticed that you can see the similarities here. Okay? Yeah. So they were both built by the White Star Line, and they were almost twins in appearance and design. But here's where things get interesting. The Olympic had already been in a couple accidents before the Titanic was finished. Some conspiracy theorists claim that the Olympic was badly damaged and the White Star Line was facing huge repair costs and possibly bankruptcy. Now, according to the theory, the company decided to secretly switch the ships. They would rename the Olympic as Titanic, send her off out on this infamous maiden voyage, and then deliberately sink her to collect a massive insurance payout. You know, kind of like the stories we hear about 9/11. Meanwhile, their real Titanic, now disguised as the Olympic, will keep sailing, okay, under her sister's name. Some people say that's impossible to do because you'll find like furniture that's in the Titanic and furniture that's in the Olympic, and yeah, that. And I was like, I don't even think it'd be that freaking hard, but you know, whatever. I'm not a shit builder. But some people on YouTube and on TikTok and wherever else, they try to debunk this whole theory with that argument. Just sad. Now, of course, most historians and experts say there's no solid evidence for this theory. They argue that the differences between the ships can explain by normal updates and changes, and that swap of the scale would have been nearly impossible to pull off, especially with so many people involved. We don't even know who these gazillion Irishmen who built the ship at. They never came up with no fucking interviews. We don't see any public interview. Even after it's sinking, you think they gave us video interviews, like we found video interviews in archives and stories told that was literally from the survivors of Titanic. But mysteriously, all these little infamous Irishmen who built this freaking ship are nowhere to be found. They put them all in these little huts and apartment buildings near the building plant where they built this freaking ship. But surprisingly, no one knows where the Irishmen are. Not one freaking interview for the 1,000 gazillion Irishmen who built this cockamamie ship. Not one freaking goddamn interview. Not one living survivor said, oh yeah, I built it. It was terrible. It was horrible. But we have witness accounts of people who survived this horrific tragedy, all of that. But not one interview from an Irish person. And it's not even that. It's the pictures they show us are sketchy as hell. They're never really working. They just posing with the damn shit. So it's a lot of theories that I'm starting to question of these Irishmen, and if they are just covering up the race of these Irishmen. But yeah, that's a whole nother goddamn theory. So let me just keep saying what I have to say, because I was about to seriously get pissed off about this alleged Irishman, you know, building this cockamamie shit, but no witness testimony or visual proof, real realistic visual proof of these recorded and infamous Irishmen. But whatever. Pisses me right on off. But anyway, let me just finish what I'm saying. So, again, supporters of this theory point to a few clues that there were subtle differences in the number of portholes, the way the ships, as you can see here, okay, the way the ships were built, and even how some of the interior features were arranged. They also mentioned that some crew members and workers seemed to cancel at the last minute or act strangely before the ship sailed, because they probably heard it from the grapevine. People who actually built it, you know, the original race of the people who actually built it, they're just keeping such a fucking secret. I'm just saying, where are these Irishmen? Where are they kids? Where are the freaking real pictures? Where? We just see a whole bunch of dudes in suits posing with the damn Titanic. Same set of freaking dudes posing with the Titanic. I want to see some real witness accounts. Give me witness accounts. Now, of course, most historians and experts say there's no solid evidence for this theory. They argue that differences between the ships can be explained by normal updates and changes, and that a swap of this scale will be nearly impossible to pull off, especially with so many people involved, and dot. But I'm going to say, but whether you believe the Olympic switch theory or not, it's a fascinating part of the Titanic lore. It shows just how much mystery and curiosity still surrounds this famous shipwreck, even more than 100 years later. So, truth seekers, what do you think? Was it really the Titanic that sunk, or did it? I mean, I don't know. Did they? I don't know. Okay, or did something much stranger happen between the scenes? I mean, let's talk about that. Because we need to talk about. Here's the photo comparisons here, because Olympic did get into a horrific accident. Okay, here's the picture of the Olympic right here. Conveniently, the place where the iceberg struck is conveniently where a big fire had pretty much occurred in the bottom half of the ship, somewhere in the halls down here. I'm not even sure hall, but it was a huge fire. And then they got to another ship. The bow of the Hawk damaged a great deal, so they had to fix that anyway. Well, I'm not done yet. And then it was the windows that was surprisingly similar to the Olympic. And people would say, well, the blueprints say this. I said, all you got to do is switch the names of blueprints. No one knew the original sketch of the Titanic any goddamn way. So all you have to do is switch the names from the Olympic to the Titanic and say this was the original sketch of this and this. No one would know. Who would know? You think the passengers are in there just sketching their own blueprints? Give me a fucking break. Okay. And then it's the insurance motivation, because J.P. Morgan was a terrible businessman, and he reminds me of Trump, seriously. And historians reject the whole theory because I didn't even get to the deep conspiracy of the whole thing. And the internet, internet loves this kind of stuff. These kind of theories keep people listening, okay? I'm not done yet. Here are some videos that I want you guys to check out, and then we'll talk later.
You know what? The movie Titanic has been lying to us for over 100 years. First, the real Titanic never sank at all. Hay disguised the damaged Olympic as the Titanic, staged the iceberg crash, and scammed massive insurance money. The actual Titanic was renamed the Olympic and kept sailing for years. And the movie never says a word about any of this. It just shoves the cheesy romance and tragic accident down our throats the whole time. Second, the sinking was no accident. It was all planned out. There were 3 ultra-wealthy tycoons on board: Astor, Guggenheim, and Strauss. All of them were Morgan's biggest business rivals, and every single one died in the disaster. They used the iceberg collision as a cover-up for a cold, calculated corporate hit. And the movie sugarcoats this whole twisted conspiracy, turning it into nothing but a tragic love story. Third, the real killer was a massive coal fire in the ship's hold. The truth is, long before hitting the iceberg, there'd been a raging coal fire burning on the Titanic for days. So when the iceberg hit, the metal didn't just bend, it shattered straight apart. The movie completely covers up that coal fire and only focuses on the iceberg crash to keep people from questioning how shoddy the ship's construction really was. So do you still think the Titanic sinking was just some random accident?
What if the Titanic never actually sank, and the entire tragedy was a massive insurance scam? Welcome to history's most dark conspiracy theory. The Titanic had an identical twin sister ship named the Olympic. Months before the disaster, the Olympic was severely damaged in a crash, leaving the owner company nearly bankrupt. The theory claims the company secretly swapped the 2 ships. They painted the damaged Olympic to look like the brand new Titanic and intentionally crashed it into an iceberg to collect the massive insurance money. This explains why the ship's powerful owner canceled his trip just hours before departure, and why many of the portholes on the sunken wreck actually match the Olympic, not the Titanic. Did 1,500 people die for a corporate payout, or is this just a crazy myth? What do you believe? Write it down and subscribe for more dark secrets.
Yes, write it down. Write it down. I believe that it was Switch. I believe he did it for insurance, which they've been doing for a very long time. This is not something that's, oh my gosh, this is new. Who does this tragic thing? No, this is something they've been doing for a very long time. So I wouldn't even put it past the White Star Line to do something of this magnitude. Okay, it's not even that. I know these are wonderful theories and these are common and popular theories, but it's also the theory that it has been reported that some kids are remembering their past lives, and in their past lives, they remember hearing and knowing of the Titanic being switched with the Olympic for insurance. And these kids are very young, and there's no way in HE double hockey sticks they would and should know this story. Just tell me what you think. Although you probably won't, because no one comments anyway, because I have my pretty much my channel viewing to probably a call center or some shit, or a rural area of the fucking community. I mean, they literally are screwing me from the back, front, and every hole in my freaking body. Seriously. Fuck them. Anyway, make sure you guys share. This made me my last live show because I'm tired of wasting my money. Okay.
Ooh, I got one for y'all. This little boy says it wasn't the Titanic that sunk. Watch this.
About the Titanic. I don't know. Tell me, no, seriously, this is important. I want to know how you know this. Please tell me.
Mom, please leave me alone.
Wait, don't. Please tell me, please. Baby, please tell me what you just said. It's very important. I'm very impressed.
The Titanic is actually the Olympic. The Titanic did not sink. The Olympic access literally sink.
The Olympic sunk. Okay. And who did that?
George Paley.
And how do you know this? Okay, so you're telling me that the guy...
George Paley sunk.
George Bailey.
The Olympic, and the movie called The Titanic is actually called The Olympic.
But that actually happened in real life. That really happened, and people lost their lives. So you're telling me there's a conspiracy theory here?
Yeah, that's the real story.
That's the real story? Okay.
He said it was a real story. Now, this little boy appears to be having a past life memory. Okay. Now, he's saying that it wasn't the Titanic. He's saying it was actually its sister ship, the Olympic, which came out in 1911. The Titanic came out in 1912 when she took her maiden voyage and hit the iceberg. Now, I looked at the comments. People were saying that he was watching YouTube, social media, blah, blah, blah. And the mother's like, he didn't have access to social media and he wasn't in school. And that time, he's 5 on this, but he could have been a little bit younger before she made that video. But really, y'all? See, that's why I love doing regression work, because you get little glimpses and pieces of what history hasn't told us yet. Y'all get in the comments and let me know what you think is going on here. I think it's a past life memory.
I actually agree. I mean, reincarnation is definitely something that goes all the way back in terms of memory and study to Egyptian times. They believe in reincarnation so much so they feel the essence and a copy of whatever they reserve around their passing or whatever around their passing. They're able to copy it and take it in their afterlife, which is why they were buried with so many riches and all the stuff that they love, because in their mind, I don't know how they know this. They could have known this from higher consciousness or whatever the case may be. I mean, they had a level of understanding and a level of consciousness that none of us are not even close to being. They were already in 7D. We're still bumping around 3-4D and shit, so that's one of the issues. But the Egyptians, they believe in reincarnation, which is why they buried themselves with a lot of, their jewels and prized possessions and things of that nature, and sometimes servants and whoever they feel they can mimic and take with them and copy with them in the afterlife, because they say, again, Whatever is around you is what you can see and take with you in the afterlife. Yeah. So these reincarnated kids are bringing up historical accounts, and some of them are definitely been proven. And there were actually passengers who survived the Titanic also heard that it was the Olympic, and they were on it. But of course, they're more than likely were sworn in secrecy, or no one believed them. It was one interview I saw with this one old lady. She was a pastor. She said, "Oh, the Olympic sunk." She's like, "I thought it was the Olympic that sunk." She's like, "No, it's Titanic." She's like, "No." So the reporter was correcting her, but she initially said the Olympic, but whatever. So that is another theory that's definitely has been proven. But a lot of people would debunk it on science and architecture and things of that nature, saying it's physically impossible. It's not that impossible. It really isn't. And no one's counting doors and halls and shit. Okay. No one's doing that when you're on the damn Titanic. I mean, no one's thinking about that. But let's dive deep, because Jacob Astor is one of the most famous people that was on it. Well, the most richest. He was actually the richest. So now that we're on the subject, let's talk about one of the most legendary and honestly the most mysterious figures in American history, Jacob Astor. Okay, let's start with wealth. Jacob Astor wasn't just rich, he was, for his time, one of the richest men in America. He made his fortune. Let me get my theme music. He made his fortune in fur trading, real estate, and investing. Now imagine someone today who owns a chunk of New York City and has business figures and fingers in every pie. That was Astor. It was reportedly he was sort of behind the Black Wall Street. That's another theory. By the time he died, he was worth what would be billions in today's dollars. He built a legacy that still shapes big chunks of Manhattan. Yeah, we all know who was bumping and rumping and pumping and stuffing around Manhattan. Keep that theory in mind. Now, on to the influence. When you have time and when you have all that money and that much money, you don't just buy nice things, you buy influence. Astor's wealth let him rub shoulders with powerful politicians, bankers, and other business leaders. He could sway decisions, shape the city, and pretty much set out his own freaking rules. That kind of influence always draw attention, both good and bad. So why do conspiracy narratives cling to Jacob Astor's name? Well, when someone is that powerful and that wealthy, people start to wonder, how did he really get all that money? What secrets did he know? Who did he work with behind the scenes? I mean, add to the fact that Astor lived during a time of secret societies, political corruption, and rapid change, and you get a recipe for rumors and wild stories, right? Some people even connect his family to big conspiracies like the sinking of Titanic, which we're talking about right now, simply because the Astors were on board and lost their lives in the disaster. But here's the thing, you gotta understand, there's a big difference between myth and documented history. Myths are stories that get passed down, often twisted and exaggerated over time. So myth generally comes from a truth base. Okay? So let me say that again. Myths are stories that get passed down, often twisted or exaggerated over time, especially about powerful figures. Documented history is what we can actually prove. Old letters, newspaper articles, business records, eyewitness accounts. The truth is, Jacob Astor was a shrewd, ambitious businessman who worked hard, took risks, and sometimes played rough. Was he perfect? No. Was he someone pulling all the strings behind major world events? Well, probably not. We don't know. So what's the takeaway? Jacob Astor's incredible wealth and influence made him a legend. And legends always attract stories. Some true, some not. Now, as truth seekers that we are, it's our job to separate the facts from fictions, right? So we're going to ask good questions and get answers to those questions and look into real evidence behind the rumors. With that said, did JP Morgan have him and the rest of his competitors killed? Okay. Why did he have him killed? Why conspiracy narratives attached to this man? What is a myth in just documented history? Let's talk about that right now. And did you notice the race of what Jacob Astor looks like? Why don't you just look at that? Now, these are original photos of Jacob Astor. Original photos. After his passing, they redistributed, okay, updated, fictitious photos that would make him look less like this. Now, if you look at these photos, what race does Jacob Astor look like? Remember, Jacob Astor was pretty much the king of Manhattan. Okay? He ruled Manhattan. He was the inspiration behind Black Wall Street. I want you guys to keep that in mind. He was pumping and rumping around Manhattan. Okay? Just want to point out the main predominant race that was, pumping and stumping around Manhattan. Just keep that theory in mind there. This is Jacob Astor, real photos and documented from Britannica of Jacob Astor. Now, his family and his ancestors has been considerably freaking edited. I mean, you can't even tell what race they are right now. Their faces look all deformed and ridiculous. I was looking at pictures and sketches today. I'm like, okay, I don't even know who these people are. I mean, it's embarrassing to even look at. But these are the original photos of Jacob Astor. As you can see, his texture of hair. Yes, he was a dark man. He was known to be dark. And he did have wavy hair. Yes, this is the original photos of Jacob Astor. Rumors are he was a black man. But that's not even that, because that's one of the reasons why they covered up this whole goddamn story. But let's get into another story here. Now, this is where it's going to get very fucking deep. Okay, so here's where it gets crazy, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? Let me go back. Okay, so the theory claims that upon Jacob Astor IV, this is the lighting version of Jacob Astor. Remember, in the before photo, if you go back here, you see the texture of his head. Zoom in with your phones. It's not straight. It looked like one of our brothers who put gel in their hair. It's wavy. If you zoom in, he have his hair and it looks wavy in the back. It doesn't look straight. Okay. Here, no, I'm not even done. Look at his mustache. Look at his mustache. This is an afro mustache. Afro mustache. Okay, zoom in for that. Now, here's the updated version that they started distributing to everyone after his passing. They straightened the mustache. You can tell them they did a little bit. They painted a straighten over the mustache. They didn't do a very good job. Straighten his hair. They updated everything. I don't even know who this dude is. Probably some dude they have posted for the photo. So they updated his pictures. I mean, it's crazy. You should see ancestors from Britannica. They faces look deformed and ridiculous. So they did that. They do that a lot about a lot of Black historical people. So we want to know the history of them. It's kind of sad. So the theory claims that Jacob Astor IV, the richest man on the ship and the world at the time, his wealth such that he controlled the world's inflation. He was just that rich. And then we have Isidore Strauss here. Okay. The owner of Macy's and a retail tycoon. And then we have Benjamin Guggenheim, who was the heir to mining empire, ergo, he had a mining empire, ergo, grave robber. Just point that crap out, okay? All together, they all represented a mass collection of wealth independently and was independent of the banking cartels. Here's what it gets weird, because it was told in November 1910, these three men of many other men met on Jekyll Island to secretly draft the Federal Reserve Act. Now, they weren't the only three on the island. There were other men on the island, okay? We had Nelson Aldrich. We have Nelson Aldrich. Where's Nelson Aldrich? That's Nelson Aldrich right there. And then we have A. Piat Andrew. So we have Andrew here. This is A. Piat Andrew. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then we have Henry Davidson. It's Henry Davidson. Then we have Arthur Shelton. That's Arthur Shelton. Then we have Frank Vanderlip. Okay? This is Frank Vanderlip. And then we have Paul Warburg. This is Paul Warburg. He wasn't there. Okay? Here's all the people who supposedly, and they were there too. They were allegedly there as well. Okay? Now, their goal was to create a centralized banking cartel A centralized banking cartel that could print money and bail out Wall Street. Genius, right? You screw up, they can bail us out. Hey, stick a red pin in that because this is where Astor and Black Wall Street comes up later. Anyway, Astor and his peers, as you know, got their money from good old-fashioned ancestry hard work. He had a fur business. He turned the fur business into investments, and the rest is history. And he became very wealthy. More than likely got passed down by this Native Indian ancestry, and so on and so forth. Okay. Guggenheim was a mine digger and a grave robber. Okay, a little sketchy, but you know, hard work is hard work. Isidore Strass was a retail tycoon. He was the creator of Macy's. Started off with a small store and it just went rampant like that. Okay, good old-fashioned hard-working investment. They probably knew how it feels to fall and rise when it comes to business like that. You know, no one was bailing them out. They just started over and did it all over again. Keep that in mind. So these three people down here, they believe in sound money, gold, and rigid property rights. They were naturally suspicious of the new money schemes that the new lazy people were starting to do. The new money schemes of the Rockefellers and Morgans, which relied on debt, leverage, and pretty much fiat currency. You understand? Rockefellers, even though he sent out his boys or whatever to do whatever, they weren't really good hard workers. They didn't get out and get their mud, you know. They were investors and enforced work through slaves and descendants of slaves, or there was racially integrated and treated people of limited means like peasants and workers. They didn't get out and do it themselves. Just saying, they didn't know nothing about no hard work. They knew about investing and using people to do the hard work. So this is where the living game of monopoly comes into play, because you must first eliminate the competition. This is JP Morgan coming to that. He wanted to eliminate the competition, acting as the agent for the banking cartel. Had the means, the motive, and the opportunity to get rid of his competitors, and the ones who opposed the idea of printing money and bailing out poor businessmen. I mean, after all, they were all owed money, and JP Morgan needed this bill passed. If one wanted to eliminate three of the most powerful men on earth without raising suspicion, a tragic maritime accident was the perfect cover, hence 9/11, but that'll be another video. But get this. Remember, JP Morgan wasn't one of the men to pass the bill out, okay? He wasn't one of the men that was on the bill. It was these people here and these people. We'll talk about them later. But he was friends with Henry Davidson. He was friends with this dude. JP Morgan and him was friends. JP Morgan was friends with this dude right here. One who was one of the top partners, as we all know, was literally at the Jekyll Island meeting drafting the freaking plan. So he was friends with this dude. Okay. Now, Morgan's banking empire stood to benefit from a central bank that could stabilize financial planning because he screwed up a lot. I mean, I'm not saying this is crazy. Morgan himself had previously acted as one-man central bank during the panic of 1907. The Fed will formalize that power after the deed was done. And the bill passed December 1913, 20 months after the sinking, and especially Astor, Strass, and Guggenheim was allegedly, who opposed the damn deal, erased from even being a part of the bill in the first place. But get this is what happens when you get small-time players to play in pros games. This political game weakened during that period. Why? Because the actual opponents were populist politicians, small regional bankers, antitrust progressives, not old money like these individuals were. They were old money. Okay? So these knuckleheads, okay, they weren't the old get the hard-working, getting your money the hard-working way and build generational wealth. I mean, let's talk about JP Morgan, for example. JP Morgan, he really did need the Federal Reserve. He need that crap passed. So when he fuck up, he can get bailed out. So he needed bad. Why? Because Morgan Empire was built on controlling credit. The panic of 1907 proved he couldn't stabilize the economy alone to save his life. A central bank will institutionalize the power he had been exercising informally. His top partners, which we know was Henry Davidson, was literally at the Jekyll Island meeting to help him out because they were all small town businessmen who fucked up and they needed a way out. It was like, if we had the bank bailout here and print our own reserve and print our own money, we fuck up, they bail us out. Bang, damn, there it is. Boom. Now these people say, well, you screw up and your business go under, it just goes under. We're not bailing you out. You better learn how to get it up yourself. Why should the banks bail you out because you screwed up? If you screwed up, it just screw up. That's what these individuals were thinking, okay? So yes, Morgan was pro-Federal Reserve. Old money titans, anti-Federal Reserve. Because Astor, Strauss, and Guggenheim all opposed the Federal, they were obstacles to these people. They didn't want it, and they needed them to approve it, and they weren't with it. Now, J.P. Morgan was just there because he was friends with this dude. He was like an agent, like a what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to think. He's like a Netanyahu kind of, or J.D. Morgan, what the fuck is, or J.D. Vance, I'm sorry, J.D. Vance. That's where he was, kind of. Okay? Or the banker from the Rothschild that's currently on Trump's little political team. Yeah, that's what he was, like a bailout kind of, and a problem solver. You know? Just saying. So not because Morgan were political activists, but because their influences could sway Congress, bankers, and public opinions. So their influences were able to, you know, because they had unlimited money. They can sway bankers and congressmen like, oh, you go my way, or not just limited on my business stores and you be fucked. So either do it my way or no way. That's what these three dudes are rolling. So they needed them gone. They was like, no, we're not going to have a bailout. No, they thinking like, okay, if you have a bailout, we just buy all your shit and just make us richer. I mean, is it not monopoly? You can't afford it, we take it. It's monopoly. The person win is the person who owns the goddamn board. They were saying, okay, no bailout, you lose, we buy our stuff, we become richer, and shit happens. And Morgan like, no. I need a cushion. I need a bailout. That's J.P. Morgan. So imagine Astor publicly opposing the Federal Reserve, which what he was, because it was told in records, you won't even see these three even on the list of people on the Jekyll Island. They erased them. So let's just think about this hypothetically here. Okay? What if Astor publicly, because they're, look, you know, screw, because he was there. Okay. Astor publicly opposed the Federal Reserve. Strauss using his political connections, which is what he did, and Guggenheim leveraging his industrial empire, which is what they did. They were in what would have been a problem for J.P. Morgan's entire fucking camp. So Morgan, who had a ticket, pretended to be on and pretended to be one of the passengers who was going to board the ship. He even had probably empty luggage claiming to be his and carried on to the ship, and then cancels at the last minute, claiming to be sick. Too conveniently, especially considering he was seen a couple of days later when the ship was in the middle of the damn ocean, far away from him, seen later happy and smiling on the island, drinking ties of scotch, whatever the hell he was drinking, like, oh, but nothing wrong with him. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was doing these dudes a fucking favor. They needed a bailout, and it was like, okay, if your business goes under, we just take all your shit. I mean, it's what it is. No bailout. It's like, no, these dudes going to be a problem. JP, do something. Well, I'm not done yet. Take a look at these videos.
The Titanic. That's not a coincidence. 3 billionaires who opposed the Federal Reserve all died on the Titanic. That's not a coincidence. In 1912, The Titanic set sail with over 2,000 passengers, but among them were Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, and John Jacob Astor, three of the wealthiest men in the world, and all three publicly opposed the creation of the U.S. Federal Reserve. They weren't just rich, they had power, enough to stop the banking system we use today. But none of them survived. Meanwhile, the man who funded the Titanic's construction, J.P. Morgan, was also one of the biggest supporters of the Federal Reserve. He was supposed to be on the ship, but he canceled at the last minute. No reason, no explanation. He lived, they didn't. A year later, the Federal Reserve Act was passed, with its strongest opposition conveniently removed. But it goes deeper. Some say the ship that sank wasn't even the Titanic, but her identical sister ship, the RMS Olympic, swapped in a massive insurance fraud cover-up. The wreck at the bottom of the ocean doesn't fully match Titanic's design. Different windows, inconsistent layout, almost like it was a different ship. So was it just an accident? Or the most elaborate setup in financial history?
There is a Titanic conspiracy theory that is absolutely unhinged. Get your tinfoil hats on. 3 of the wealthiest men in America boarded Titanic in April 1912. All 3 died. 20 months later, the United States Federal Reserve was signed into law, fundamentally restructuring the entire American banking system. Coincidence? Some say not. Let's get into it. There were a lot of VIPs on Titanic. Benjamin Guggenheim, the American mining magnate, Isidor and Ida Straus, the owners of Macy's, and John Jacob Astor IV, who was worth $90 million in 1912. He was the wealthiest person on board by a significant margin. But the most notable VIP was actually someone who wasn't even there. J.P. Morgan, who had purchased White Star Line Shipping Company in 1902 for an eye-watering $32 million. He was scheduled to set sail on Titanic, but canceled last minute due to being sick. So between Astor, Straus, and Guggenheim, 3 men representing an almost unimaginable concentration of old money, power, and influence went down with the ship, while J.P. Morgan was staying alive. Okay, so here's a conspiracy theory. Astor, Straus, and Guggenheim were allegedly opposed to creating a central bank in America and had the power and influence to block it. The theory goes that their deaths conveniently cleared the path for the Federal Reserve to become law. But the thing is, the Federal Reserve didn't just appear out of thin air in 1913. Its framework was quietly drafted 2 years before Titanic ever set sail, at a now famous secret meeting on Jekyll Island, Georgia in November 1910. Senator Nelson Aldrich and representatives of America's most powerful banking houses arrived separately, used first names only, and told nobody about where they were going. The secrecy was intentional. They knew what they were building was controversial. So the Federal Reserve was already in motion well before Titanic left Southampton. On top of that, there is no documented evidence that Astor, Straus, or Guggenheim were actively opposed to the Federal Reserve. There are no speeches, no letters, no recorded political opposition. This theory rests almost entirely on the fact that they were powerful, wealthy, and died right before the Federal Reserve passed. And that is quite the leap. What I will say is we can't prove that they would have opposed the Federal Reserve, but we can't prove that they wouldn't have either. Their deaths objectively removed 3 of the most powerful financial voices in America during a pivotal moment in its history. Is it a conspiracy? Almost certainly not in the way that it gets told online, but it's certainly strange and historically fascinating. And honestly, with Titanic, that feels exactly right. This is just a snippet of my epic 3-part Titanic series that goes live on my YouTube channel on April 14th. So if you're watching it today, it is out right now.
Beautiful. I had to find a video with someone saying the exact same thing that I was saying. Remember, it wasn't any documented history that was on there, but would it be considering they were the 3 that opposed it? They opposed it. They wasn't all for it anyway. And in order for that Federal Reserve for a bailout, for just to sum it up, so America can print currency, money to bail out banks and things of that nature when they fuck up. That's literally what the Federal Reserve is, the bill that passed. It's like a bailout bill, and it's still intact right now. Point that crap out there. Anyway, as I was saying. Okay. Let's move forward here. And I'm not done yet. Then there's the suspicious behavior. The suspicious behavior with old Captain Smith here. Yeah. See, Edward Smith added another layer of darkness. Smith was a Morgan man because him and Morgan, J.P. Morgan was buzz. He was always, captain of the ships, and other ships as well. But they were buddies. Okay. So Smith was a Morgan man, having served the financial interest for years. On the night of April 14, he drove that ship at full speed into a known ice field, disregarding several goddamn warnings that were ignored and not passed to the bridge. Some of them just ignored, and they responded back and told them to completely shut up with the warnings. Those are facts. Now, the binoculars were conveniently locked in the cabinet, to which the key had been left behind, conveniently. Yeah, like someone that want them to see the iceberg. Who did that? Because the person who had the key wasn't even on the goddamn ship. Yeah, another level to J.P. Morgan's 9/11 catastrophe sounded like. When the Titanic slipped between the waves, it took Astor, Strauss, and Guggenheim, the three most men who opposed this Federal Reserve Act, because they want to remain rich. So if their competitors fuck up, why get bailout? We just buy your stuff and then we stay rich. Just saying, I don't blame them. Like, hey, it is what it is. Shit happens. So their death was heroic, but politically they were convenient. And one night, the combined wealth and influence of the opposition was liquidated. While the world wept for the Titanic, the bankers went to work. The money trust investigation, the Pew Hole Committee was raging in Washington, but the opposition was now leaderless. In December 1913, just 1 year and 8 months after the sinking, the Federal Reserve Act was passed. The timeline is almost too goddamn precise and too coincidental. Okay? 1910, the plan was hatched, as you heard from that lady there. Jekyll Island. 1912, the opposition is removed. Titanic. In 1913, the plan was executed. Federal Reserve Act. Sounds familiar? And just to sum it up, today's re-recorded history says Astor, Strauss, and Guggenheim had nothing to do with the Federal Reserve. Hell, they even racing for the records, documented recordings, the whole 9 yards. Are we surprised by that? We talking about the people who literally erased our entire fucking history and put their faces on. Like, we supposed to believe a bunch of Caucasian people, Red Lobster people running around Egypt with beads and bonnets on. We supposed to believe that we all came from them. So you don't think this is not impossible? Give me a fucking break. So just to sum it up again, today's re-recorded history says Astor, Strauss, and Guggenheim had nothing to do with the Federal Reserve, but witness accounts and stories that survived time says otherwise. It was told they had posed it and they had the power to stop it. So then their deaths on the Titanic became more than a tragedy. They became a turning point in American financial history, because after they died, the Federal Reserve Act passed, and the man who benefited the most was J.P. Morgan and his homeboys, who was conveniently not on the goddamn ship. You're saying. So, why this is important today, I'll tell you why in just a minute. So then we have the whole switch of theory, which wouldn't be the first time JP Morgan did some insurance fraud, if you really dig in this man's history. But the rabbit hole goes deeper. The switch theory suggests the vessel that sank was not the Titanic at all, but her older damaged sister ship, the RMS Olympic. This provides the financial motives, insurance fraud, because the Olympic was a floating wreck after collision, and the White Star Line was facing a liquidating crisis. They swapped the ships, sent the damaged Olympic to be sunk, and collected insurance money for a brand new goddamn vessel, which he didn't have, by the way. The Federal Reserve was sold as a safety ship just in case you fuck up for the economy. Because remember, he invested $32 million to have his first ship built. He was like, now I need some cushion just in case this don't work out. Now the old vets was like, okay, if it don't work out, you're just gonna have to live with it. He's like, no, he's like a Trump, no. I need a bailout. Help me, please. That's JP and his little homeboys. So they started advertising because he wanted people on this ship. He needed the passengers. He needed the money. So he started advertising this unsinkable vessel that would prevent financial panics. It was a cruel irony, but it worked. The same man who allegedly engineered the sinking of the real ship used the fear of sinking markets to build their financial fortress. Now, since 1913, the US dollars has lost 99% of its purchasing power and is still descending right to this day, thanks to a known person. We have fought 2 world wars, funded entirely by Federal Reserve inflation. The warnings of the man who died, who said this was a complete fuck up, they warned that this will happen, but they didn't listen because we have spoiled brats who's used to people blowing them out. So, yeah. They warned them about this. So the warnings of the men who died on the Titanic were silenced by the water. And their nightmares have become a reality, as you can see, because JP Morgan still lost a lot of shit. And he died a year later, talk about karma. So what is the lesson? Well, the Federal Reserve Act signed into the law in 1913 is still the governing law that created and empowers the Federal Reserve System today. It has been amended many times, but never dismantled. Yeah, I'm not even done yet because it gets so freaking deeper. So why the act still controls today? Well, let me just give you a little, insight here. Okay, here's what the act still gives the Federal Reserve power to do. Print, you might have told you we print our own currency. We print U.S. currency, Federal Reserve notes, which will more than likely be used to bail out Trump and his homeboys. Yeah. It will bail out Trump. When he's removed, they're going to have to enact this Federal Reserve and print our money to bail us out of the hole that he put us in. Yeah. So it was pretty much fit for poor businessmen like Trump, which what the old fogies would have said, well, shit happens, we're not bailing you out. No. We'd rather build it on new ideas, new ventures, pretty much what other countries and continents do, but whatever. So, and it literally controls the interest rates. Yeah, because they need the money. I mean, they need some kind of cushion in terms of printing our currency. It regulates banks, make sure banks don't fall under, especially the banks that they're currently using. Not all banks, but banks that's included in their elite circle. And as a lender of last resort, like just in case shit fuck up, like JP Morgan and his homeboys. Yeah. And what's going to happen when Trump is removed? Yeah. It managed inflation. Yeah, so inflation goes out of whack. Let's go and print some currency and let's go ahead and balance that shit on out. It stabilized financial markets. Yeah. So when things go wrong, let's print some money, let's bail them out too. And then Trump will love this. Yeah. Just saying. Oversee the money supply, which is what it's doing. Remember, Trump fired the original people who was in charge of the Federal Reserve and put his crooked homeboys in charge just in case he needs to enact the Federal Reserve Printing Currency Bill Act that got enacted in 1913. Yeah. Now it's coming together. So in other words, the entire U.S. financial system still runs on the framework created in 1913. Oh, yeah. Now let's talk about the actual race and identities of the individual on the ship. Now they got all the political and legal gamble out of the way. Let's start talking about some real racial shit, because this is where it really gets freaking sketchy. Seriously. Okay. Why people rewrite ancestry? I don't know. Why do they do that? Now, there have been some leaked stories revealing that there were actually Black passengers and that Jacob Astor was actually a Black man. As you can see here, let me move that picture so you guys can see him a little better. Give me a moment here. Okay. So, yeah, Jacob Astor was actually a Black man. This is the original picture of him. And I showed other pictures of him as well. And this is the repainted light. And yes, they did have Photoshop back in those days. This is the repainted, lighted versions of him. This is the real him. This is the repainted, real, repainted, real. And as you can see, his head looks kind of fake. It's like you painted it on top of his collar or something like that. That's literally how it freaking looks. It looks kind of weird, but that's what it is. He was actually Black. It was actually documented history that the Irishmen who built the ship were actually Black, and this is why they were so adamantly not trying to get actual witness accounts of all these Irishmen. Yeah, it was actually Black people who built the ship. They didn't want you to know that because they just didn't want you to know that. I mean, are we supposed to? No, we're not. So the switch of the races came years later, as usual, to whitewash many things, such as erasing any evidence of the Titanic Moors and how they made the Moors/Indians register as Negroes, later Africans, to Black, and but still calling us African when none of us are from fucking Africa. But that's a whole nother goddamn subject. This here, every time you look at pictures of the building of the Titanic, you see a bunch of men posing, not really doing anything, just posing. And they don't even look like they're in workman clothes. And some of the pictures are blurry. And if you look closely, they're literally doubling some of the images of the workmen. It's doubling like a Photoshop, like copy, paste on some of the workmen. The original photos, I don't know where they're at. We have no actual witness accounts of any of the workmen at all. We just know they threw them all in these little apartments and stuff, like they do slaves, and just made them work. And I guess they signed NDAs or some shit. I don't really know. But no one really have actual pictures of the workmen. We just have these posing pictures of people who they paid to pose in front of this. You know what? Never mind. I want you guys to take a look at this video.
Are y'all ready for a history lesson? Let's go back to black nobility.
It was a targeted hit on the indigenous Moorish nobility. Don't believe me? Go look up Joseph Philippe Lalessier Laroche, a black engineer from the LeConte political dynasty, traveling first class during the Titanic era. The original Jacob Astor, Isidor Straus, and Guggenheim were originally all Moors. But of course, they only show you the pale version. They bleached the history to hide the Moorish tenure of the land. But the bloodline is the Grail. Why'd they do it? Because these titans were against the establishment of the League of Nations and the plan of experts designed to seize world treasuries. Look up Paul Cupp, ship owner and global merchant, before the U.S. even knew what it was. Look up Madam C.J. Walker and Aurelia Walker, controlling millions, property, factories, and social power. Look up Robert Reed Church Sr., black millionaire of the South.
You think we were just slaves off boats? Houseway, I'm showing you the receipts they hid. Black aristocrats in the Titanic era. Families with land, gold, ships, and banks. We weren't begging, we were building empires. That's why the Titanic wasn't just a tragedy, it was a targeted hit. Connect the dots. The truth ain't lost, it's been buried, and I'm here to dig it up.
They love to say Joseph LaRoche was the only black man on the Titanic, but that's only because they already whitewashed the rest. The original Astors, Guggenheims, Strausses, and LeConte bloodlines were Moors long before their portraits were corrected and their history rewritten. Once America and Europe adopted the bleaching of nobility, any elite family was painted over, literally and legally. So when the Titanic sank, they could safely call LaRoche the only one, because they hid the truth of the others. The whole narrative depends on Moors being erased from high society, because
I told you guys to go deep. I told you. So here's the question here, ladies and gentlemen. Why these theories exist? Well, fear of power. Some people have just a hatred to those who are in power, whether it's personal, racially motivated, because it could be because of past failures or political, or they just spread rumors, or in most cases, you know, some people actually reveal the truth, but they're killed. And then there's the distrust of institutions. This distrust caused them to question everything, which is what we're doing, my truth seekers. Desire for the hidden truth is what keeping it alive. And in fact, we're in the age of Aquarius, and they desperately trying to get people back to the church. Don't go back to the church. unless you want to be lost again and repeat the same old stupid mistakes. Stop. Believe in yourself. We got a bunch of wimps who are afraid to believe in themselves. Anyway, so the desire will stop at nothing until the truth is revealed, and that's what I'm here. Even though I'm only getting paid like $3 or $1.50 for this entire live shows, and pretty much all my live shows. So human pattern seeking is definitely something because many people love a good mystery and the truth. Many people will gravitate to this story and theory, and because they feel like something is missing. You ever keep going over story, just like the TV series. I forgot TV series that was talking about Egyptian times. I forgot what it's called. But anyway, it was that TV series. And a lot of Black people can watch it. It was gravitating toward it. Like that is the same way they gravitate toward Louis Vuitton. That, you know, not the Louis Vuitton with the B, but Louis Vuitton with the V. You know, the pattern. It's attracting. Why? Because he stole that pattern from African people who should sue his punk ass. But anyway, that's why. That is why, because these images are traced down from our ancestors and it triggers memory and we are attracted to them. You know what I mean? That's what it is. This shit kept attracting a lot of people like something isn't right. Now you see this Benjamin Guggenheim, and this is the original picture of Benjamin Guggenheim. Now the picture that they have later is nothing like this original picture right here. Did you notice that? This actually looked like a Black man. Maybe a little bit light-skinned with his hair just slicked down in waves. Look like one of my ancestors, seriously. This is what this looked like. But if we wish to go back, the other picture of Benjamin Guggenheim don't look nothing like this. Watch. Let me show you. I had another picture of him, and it didn't look nothing like this. Let me show you. Let's go back. Okay, here we go. See? They placed this, the picture that you saw before, to this person. Who is this? And I was looking, I'm like, who is this person? I don't know who this person is. This is the picture that we placed him with. Revamp. This probably not even him. This probably some actor or model who they just paid to pose for this picture. And now you go back later. We go back later. Okay. Yeah. And here's the original picture. Yeah. Think about that. Yeah. Okay, so now that we're on that whole thing. So then we get to the myth and why a myth is called a myth. Now, myth has meaning, making. Please remember, every myth is based on from a place of truth that was either embellished or too outlandish to believe is true. Along with a conspiracy. Myth and conspiracies are based on truth. Again, they're either embellished or maybe most of them are not embellished, or they're too outlandish for people to believe it. Remember, people were saying that the rich was eating babies, and Roseanne Barr said that. They called her crazy. Michael Jackson was bursting out the elite altogether with Tommy Mottola. Remember the video I had released about what he pretty much did to Jennifer Lopez, the Latino who was literally trying to make it in Hollywood while being racially profiled and categorized. She was used as a pawn just so Tommy Mottola can get back at Mariah Carey and others. Okay? So just to end this, the Titanic is a tragedy. The myths are a reflection. What we believe says more about us than this ship. Well, that's it. Thanks to all who stayed throughout the duration of this video and this live show. Talk to you all later. I'm out. Bye.